Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we have the brand new Tier 8 Premium Peruvian Cruiser, the Comandante Aguirre, import to review for you guys today. This is the Haarlem that the Dutch maybe could have, perhaps, once upon a time, sold to Peru after they were done with it.
It's fiction. We made it up. We made this one up. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication.
And she's got a couple of tweaks here and there from the Haarlem to, well, give her her own unique identity. We'll be looking at her today and discussing whether or not you do want to cough up the cash to purchase the Aguirre here. So, before we do so, an absolutely massive shout out must go to the channel's Patreon supporters, as I am not a CC, so I do not get to this ship or any of the ships that you see featured here on the channel to review for free. We have to purchase them using the generous funds that the Patreon supporters donate every month, and if you wish to support the channel, Patreon is the best place to do so, besides just watching the streams, videos, and whatnot. So again, absolutely massive shout out to those guys whose names should have just gotten done appearing up on screen here. And again, link to that is in the description down below. Alright, so the Aguirre. This ship, I remember, of course, going on the dev blog for it. And from what I recall, this is supposed to be a Haarlem with heavy-hitting 203s that have enhanced armor-penetrating capabilities. And I believe she, of course, has a funding button now that she belongs to, well, the Pan-American tree. So we're going to go ahead and take a peek at all that and look under the hood of the Aguirre today. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. Of course, if you do find this review helpful, informational, or entertaining, please make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. All of that jazz helps out tremendously so on the YouTube side of things, appeasing our algorithm overlords. But alright, the Aguirre. So let's take a look at, of course, well, starting with her economy. This is a Tier 8 premium ship, so you do get, of course, the Tier 8 premium economy with the ship, which will give you a, baked-in boost, but you also get the bonus package with it as well, which is a 5% buff to her credit earnings and a 50% buff to her various XPs. Oh, before we go too far, almost forgot, how does one acquire an Aguirre? I'm glad you asked. Well, if you head on over to the Armory tab, you will see in the featured section the now it's down here. Okay, since I bought it and moved down. You will see the Comandante Aguirre available in an Admiral pack for a whopping $79 US.
Hello, I like money.
Or you can perhaps get her in one of these random bundles. There are 17 random bundles. She's in one of them at the cost of 1,500 doubloons a bundle. Now, if you do, of course, get her this way, you're just getting the ship. You're not getting all of the stuff that comes in the Admiral pack, of course. The Admiral pack, of course, has, well, a lot. You get not only the ship, you get a 10-point commander, the triple detonation destruction effect, the waves of Copacabana permacamo. You get 10 of each type of the blue economic bonuses, and then you get a bunch of signal flags and such, and the Comandante Aguirre flag, and a 20% buff to your XPs of all type combat mission. That is my Discord and not yours. Alright, so that's how you can acquire her if you are wondering. So of course, in true wargaming fashion, it's either gamble or pay an exorbitant amount of money for an Admiral bundle, well above the normal price of a premium ship of that tier. But that's, of course, just how wargaming is nowadays, unfortunately. So we'll be keeping that in mind as, of course, we go through the ship. Alright, but back to said ship. So for our armor layout, you have a 25mm bow with a 50mm icebreaker bow right here. Your upper plating is 40mm of armor. You have torque protection that is 27mm thick. Let's take a look at the stern before we start ripping out layers. Oh, nice little strip back here. I believe the Haarlem has the same get-up going on. 50mm, 25mm at the stern, 25mm stern deck. Okay, now taking away that torpedo protection. Yep, there is that 200mm armor belt right there. And then stripping all this away, there is your citadel. It's mostly below the water, or like just above the water line. We have this little bump right here that comes up. but you have this bit of armor coming down on top of it. So that's not bad for a cruiser. I mean, the Dutch cruisers are, well, the heavy cruisers are pretty well armored. And this thing's supposed to be played at close range from my understanding, so it seems that that's pretty decent for that. But again, of course, see how it goes in game. Survivability, you have 42,200 hit points with a 19% torpedo damage reduction rating. Our main battery guns, you get, oh my god, 18 seconds reload. Oh boy. That's, man, that's a lot. Dang, I forgot about that. I mean, man, people make fun of what Prince Eugen for 13 seconds. Whoo, buddy, 18.5. You're starting to make the battleships blush with that reload. But all right. So yeah, long reload time. That was in the description of the ship. But yeah, we'll keep going on here. Maximum dispersion of 137 meters. The maximum range of 15.1 kilometers, which is not a lot of range by Tier 8 cruiser standards. The HE shells do a maximum damage of 2,700 with an 11% fire chance. And they do pin 34 millimeters of armor base, so that's, of course, very nice. You get over that 32 millimeter threshold. They come out the tubes at 925 meters a second. And the AP does a maximum damage of 4,550, which also come out the tubes at 925 meters a second. Now, she does have enhanced armor penetration capabilities. Let me make sure I am saying that correctly. So, which is the justification, of course, for her longer reload time, and another trick that she has up her sleeves. The AP shells with high armor penetration capabilities. Okay, so strong armor penetration, high firepower, with excellent armor penetration. Okay, so I mean they are screaming out of the tubes at 925 meters a second. I'm assuming they probably mess with like the croup and stuff of the shells to make them, you know, bite a little bit harder, but that's assuming because, of course, the game does not tell us this information in game. All right, A defense, she has a rating. She does have some secondary guns. Well, that's the airstrike. You have 8 of the 120 millimeter guns. This is not a secondary ship, so this is primarily just for, of course, AA duties. All right, airstrikes. If you are wondering, she gets 2 attacking flights. Each flight drops 2 bombs, so 4 bombs per flight to deal with those subs. Alright, so A defense, she has 28 of the 20mm Oerlikons, 20 of the 40mm Bofors, and then of course the 8 120s are also dual purpose as well, for a total AA rating of 72, which means it's okay. Maximum speed is 32.5 knots with a turning circle radius of 730 meters and rudder shift time 11.1 seconds. Consumables is 13.3 kilometers, 2 kilometers less than her base firing range. So, alright. Alright, going over to her box of gimmicks. So like I said, it is a Pan-American ship, so that means she does, of course, have to have some type of gimmick. And this time, it is the immediate main battery reload consumable. This gives you a 70% buff to the reload time of your main battery gun. So you're taking that 18.5 second base reload time and cranking it on down to what? Oh my god, it's going to be 5-6 seconds? No, it's going to be shorter than that. Like 3 seconds, maybe, depending upon how you build it. Of course, we'll see how this works in game. But how does it get filled? Okay. You take potential damage, or you hit an enemy ship with a main battery shell. So basically, you get shot at, and you hit stuff with your guns. You get this combat instructions up, and you have basically an on-demand reload booster that is unlimited. You have 50 seconds before you start losing progress, though, so that's okay. Okay, but we'll see. You do get a hydroacoustic search with a range of 5 kilometers and a runtime of 100 seconds. You do also get a heal, thank God, which regens 211 HP per second and runs for 28 seconds base. And of course, damage con that runs for 5 seconds with a 60-second cooldown. Alright, so that is the Aguirre. I'm going to go ahead and slap a commander and module build on here, and I'll meet you guys right back here. Alrighty guys, with my commander and module build on, of course we have Mr. Joachim on board. given his, of course, tendency to break Pan American ships, right? But anyway, so with the Commander build, so the whole thing about the ship, from what I've been able to gander and what my ape brain has understood, is that close range AP. That's this ship's thing. At least that's what Wargaming's saying this ship's thing is. So I've kind of built it for that. So naturally, I've taken Last Stand. Cruisers, of course, have thin armor. The modules get knocked out way easier than battleships. So your engine gets knocked out, your rudder gets knocked out. That's a really big deal on a cruiser, so we want them to still work, which is what Last Stand allows them to do at a reduced rate. So there you go. Going down the 2 line the first time, consumable enhancements. This gives us a 10% longer runtime on our hydroacoustic search. Hydro is a very useful tool to have, and well, we want it to run as long as we can possibly get it to. It's great for detecting torpedoes, other ships, submarines, and such. So you definitely want to have that running as long as possible, at least in my brain. I could see you take Safety Circuit Hill with Priority Target, but from my experience, the more experience you get in a game, you don't really have to take Priority Target because you kind of know when you're getting stared down, right? So a good rule of thumb to get away from Priority Target: if you're spotted, someone's looking at you. All right, so just know that. But yeah, you could take it if you want. All right, then, of course, Adrenaline Rush. This gives us a 0.2% buff to our reload time for every 1% of HP lost. Given that we have, friggin' 18.5-second reload time on these guns, you're definitely going to want to be cashing that in as you take damage. So, more damage you take, lower the reload time on your guns is. Heavy AP shells. This is literally free damage. A 5% buff to the amount of damage our shells are doing. Literally free damage. And, of course, Superintendent for another charge of our heal and hydroacoustic search. So that's more HP that we can recover. That's one more time we can use our hydroacoustic search. Great, we want that. And Survivability Expert. This gives us another 500 HP per tier of the ship. More HP, we live longer, we can do more stuff in game. So, yeah, you want that. And then, of course, Concealment Expert for a 10% buff to the ship's detection range. And lastly, I came back and took Demolition Expert. This gives another 1% chance of starting a fire with our HE shells. It is supposed to be an AP focused ship, but at the end of the day, you are probably going to have to throw HE in somebody's face, and the chances of you starting a fire being greater is pretty good. Again, I was kind of torn between either taking Demolition Expert or cashing in 2 points for Grease the Gears and Consumable Specialist, or maybe Gun Feeder given the long reload time of the guns. And sure, maybe, but we'll see how the ship performs, and I might tweak this a little bit as the night goes on. But for the modules, though, I kind of put a standard-ish cruiser build on it for the time being. But this ship doesn't have torpedoes. It's all about the main guns. So, of course, built into the main guns as much as we could with a Tier 8 ship. But anyway, Main Armaments Mod 1. This reduces the chance of our main battery guns becoming incapacitated by 20% and speeds up their repair time by 20% as well as buffing the survivability by 50%. So this keeps the guns in the fight for longer, and if they do get knocked out, it reduces the recovery time. I then went and took engine room protection because, while yeah, sure, we do have Last Stand, if we can just not have the engine or rudder get knocked out, that's great. And this reduces the chances of both of those things happening by 20% and also boosts their recovery time by 20% as well. And then we took Aiming Systems Mod 1 for another 7% buff to the dispersion of the main battery guns, making these spicy AP shells even more accurate. So that's very nice. And then Propulsion Mod 1 because, well, I figured in a close range situation, having the ability to throttle up faster is something that you're going to want to do. And I know that because, well, that definitely helps in a lot of close range engagements. So that's why we took this. Could take the rudder module here if you want. Again, I may take steering gears. I may, twist this up a little bit. But for now, this is what we're rocking. And then Consumables System Mod 1 for another 10% buff to the ship's detection range. And here be the flags that I am running. So now with these flags, these modules, and this commander build, the ship now has 48,550 HP. The guns now, the maximum dispersion 128 meters. And, oh, the AP now does 4,778 maximum damage. Well, it should have changed. Maneuverability, no, that shouldn't have changed. Well, 34.1 knots with the speed flag equipped. Consumables now down to 10.7 kilometers, much more comfortable. And 4 charges of heal, 4 charges of hydro, which, by the way, you can take DFAA if you, for some reason, want to, but take hydro. And what else did we... Oh, yeah, the runtime on... No, none of that changed. Okay. So I think that is it. I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. All right, we're going to go ahead and take the Aguirre into battle. I'll meet you guys there with a voiceover review. All right, guys, voiceover Sea Lord here. So the Comandante Aguirre. Well, let's start off with those AP shells. So since the game does not tell us what's going on with these AP shells, I went ahead and I looked up the AP shells on Ship Tool, and they pretty much did what I thought they did. They increased the Krupp and they decreased the, well, they improved the air drag coefficient for the shells. So what that means is Krupp is how basically hard the shell is. So if you have a higher Krupp, you can, get through more armor. And the air drag coefficient is the rate at which the shell, experiences air drag. So if you have a better air drag coefficient, the shell slips through the air much better and it, impacts the target with more velocity. So the Krupp on the Comandante Aguirre shells is 2,977. And the air drag coefficient is 0.263. On the Harlem, the ship that the Comandante Aguirre is essentially a copy of, the Krupp is 2,409. The air drag coefficient is 0.297. So you get a little bit better Krupp, you get a little bit better air drag, so the shells are basically carrying more momentum when they impact the target, and the shells are also, stronger, stiffer, essentially, so they're penetrating the target that much better, so you get more penetration. For comparison, at 12 kilometers, the Harlem has 207 millimeters of armor penetration, while the Comandante Aguirre, again at 12 kilometers, has 242 millimeters of penetration. So what does that mean? That means you will be bullying broadside cruisers a lot more with the Aguirre than you would with the Harlem. Now, the fuse time is still the same, so ironically, this improved AP penetration capabilities does sometimes come around to bite you in the butt because you'll be over-penetrating some targets too as well. Although from my experiences, if you do the old tricks, aiming at the water and such when you're really close to something like a light cruiser, the shells will slow down enough in the water to citadel the enemy ship. So the improved AP is indeed very nice, very nice, very nice indeed. Not gonna lie, it's kind of fun bullying other cruisers out of existence. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is that 18.5 second reload time on the main battery guns. Now, that is long. I don't care, how good your AP is, unless it's like super space age AP, that is still a detriment to your performance as a cruiser. Now, you might be saying, well, Sea Lord, you have the combat instructions to counteract that. And yes, that is true. When you get those combat instructions going, you've got a 5-ish second reload time, again, depending upon stuff like Adrenaline Rush, right? But you got about 4 to 5 seconds worth of reload on your main battery guns with those combat instructions going, which is obviously quite nice. And, well, when you got those combat instructions going, you can basically get, 4 salvos out of your Aguirre back to back to back to back. So it turned into a Des Moines for like 20 seconds, essentially. Kind of the same gimmick as the Bridgeport, but you have an infinite supply of it, while the Bridgeport only has, a minute and change of it or something like that. So when it's going, yeah. You use it right, you'll find a broadside cruiser, you pop that reload booster, and you'll probably delete him by the time you're done bursting him with that reload booster. Battleships, I find that, you hit their upper belt, you hit their superstructure, you hit their extremities. Yeah, you're going to chunk them pretty good. About 5 to 6-ish K a salvo with the Aguirre's AP. So, easily do around 20K to them in one burst. So that is very cool and very useful, obviously, in battle. And the Aguirre is more geared towards close range engagements, right? I mean, it does have, it's a Harlem, so it's pretty well armored. You have that 40 millimeter upper armor, that 40 millimeter deck. That's pretty nice. Well, the 40 millimeter deck's actually pretty good at longer ranges too. Longer ranges at 15 kilometers, right? But what I'm saying is the ship is well armored. So you get in there, you come around a corner, you got your combat instructions up, you blap someone with 4 salvos back to back to back. Yeah, that does very much put in work. But there's a problem. The combat instructions are filled by taking potential damage primarily. Now, you might be thinking, well, Sealord, you said in port, you can fill it with main battery gun hits too. Yes, you can, but the income from that is quite terrible. It's it's 1% per main battery shell hit, meaning that you will have to hit an enemy ship 100 times with your main battery shells to get your reload booster going. And keep in mind, if you don't hit them for 50 seconds, that all resets. So yeah, the income from the potential damage is way better than the income from the main battery shell, as I'm sure you'll see in the background footage here. So that of course means that ships have to be shooting at you in order for you to fill up your combat instructions. It's not like the Growl, where you can just go dark for a few seconds and automatically get your reload booster. You've got to be getting shot at to really get it in the Aguirre, which does lead to some pretty awkward situations. Now, the match watching in the background is more of an ideal match for the Aguirre, right? We're able to push through. I'm at relatively close range to the enemy team, and for most of the battle, I'm getting shot at in one way or another, so I do get to use my combat instructions here fairly regularly. But not every battle is like this, of course. This is a Tier 8 game. So I'm able to be more aggressive because it is a Tier 8 game. There's not, a bunch of Tier 10 ships running around. But think about, of course, when you are in a Tier 8 ship and you get double up tiered to higher tier. That's a little bit rougher because the meta is much more passive at those tiers. Which does mean instead of being able to, get in close and use your AP, you're going to be stuck HE spamming in the Aguirre. And with that 18.5 second reload time, HE spamming is pretty not fun. Now you do have that 11% fire chance with your main battery guns, and if you do run the fire flags, that turns into 12%. You take Demolition Expert, that's 13%. That is fairly high, but it is still RNG at the end of the day, and you do have an 18-second reload on your main battery guns. Now, of course, if you get your combat instructions up and, you play it smart, you see someone, pop their damage con, then yeah, hit F, throw 4 salvos at them. You're definitely probably going to set them on fire, if RNG likes you, of course. But when you are stuck in those high tier games, and you are stuck HE spamming, and they, for some reason, don't really feel like shooting at you, it's very, very awkward. You're stuck there with an 18-second reload, throwing HE at these ships that are bow into you, because, well, yeah, sure, the AP has better penetration. It's still not going to do much to a bow-in Tier 10 battleship or a bow-in Tier 10 heavy cruiser, an angled Tier 10 heavy cruiser, because it is still AP at the end of the day, so you will have to use HE at some point when playing the Aguirre. So you're just kind of stuck there, not really doing a whole lot, and praying to the RNG overlords that you can maybe get a fire every now and then. So, yeah, the highs are really high with the Aguirre, though, and the lows are very low. What's really funny, too, is that throughout playing the Aguirre, I was getting like 80k games because, you get in Tier 10 matchmaking, the situation I just described to you happens, right? I got a couple of 80k games back to back to back, and like I'm getting the second place XP achievement in the Aguirre, and I'm like, what the heck is the damage for this thing so low that I'm getting the second place XP badge for an 80k game every time? That's kind of wild. So apparently it's not just me, running into this issue. But yes, when things go well, you get your combat instructions up, yeah, the ship is really fun. And I can see what they're going for here. It's like, okay, if you play aggressive, you're getting shot at, you're returning fire, your combat instructions get built up, and then you get your little Peruvian Des Moines here for a few seconds. But there's genuinely times when you are, again, in those high tier games, being forced to HE spam, just begging for someone to shoot at you.
Can somebody attack me, please?
So you can get your combat instructions up while you're, trying to do something in a tier 10 game. So that's fairly awkward. And keep in mind too that this is a Harlem, but unlike the Harlem, it doesn't have any airstrikes. It doesn't have any torpedoes. So you are fully depending upon your reload boosted 203mm guns when you do need to get damage done. And yeah, when you got that reload boost going, they are pretty magical for blapping other cruisers and such, and chunking battleships pretty good, but you have to get them up. So it's interesting indeed, and I see what they're going for here, and I can really appreciate it, but I don't know. I mean, maybe the base reload is too long, so I could see like maybe bumping it down to like 15 seconds, but at the same time bumping down the length of the reload booster to kind of compensate for that, because there are times when, well, not sometimes, there's a lot of times when I'm sitting there and I was just thinking, you know what? I would take the improved AP and just a normal reload time and get rid of the combat instructions altogether, because at that point it'd be a pretty nice cruiser even with the shortened range, just because of how passive higher tier games can be. But I'm kind of happy that they stuck to their guns and went with this more aggressive version, if you will. So kudos to them for that, I guess. So at the end of the day, is the Aguirre worth it? Well, for the current asking price of $70 and change via an Admiral bundle, or a couple rounds of gambling via some random bundles, I'd say this is a wait for it to come back ship. It's nothing too crazy insane. I don't think it's going to be really dominating the random battles playscape. Competitive, I could see it definitely doing well in tier 8 ranked, because having a tier 8 ship with a hill, I almost forgot to mention that it is a well armored ship with a hill, and it has the cruiser burn time versus the battleship burn time. I believe the Harlem has the battleship burn time, but the Aguirre does not. Yeah, I could see this working in random battles definitely, because you kind of gotta shoot it in ranked, right? So I could see it flourishing there pretty well, but not really worth $70, $79 US, because a tier 8 ship outright for sale goes for about $50 US of this rarity level, so you're paying $20 extra for all the Admiral Pack add-ons, which no one really cares too much about. You do get it. It was what Wargaming uses to inflate the prices of the Admiral bundles, but this is like pick it up for a normal price ship. So when she comes back in 6 months, I'd say yeah, if you're interested in her, she's worth picking it up then, but definitely not worth dropping about 80 US on it right now. Overall, for a numerical rating, I would give the Aguirre a 7 out of 10. She's fairly situational, with that reload booster, but when you get in close and you can use that reload booster, you catch someone's broadside, it is definitely very, very nice for sure. And the improved AP is definitely a nice touch, being able to pretty much bully anything that's not like a super heavy cruise, like an Alaska or something like that. That's pretty nice. The HE does have that 12% fire chance, 11% fire chance base, 12% with the flags, 13% with the skill. That's fairly nice. And when you do have your reload booster going, that's very, very nice for sure. Her major downsides are the fact that, you are stuck with that 18.5 second reload when you don't have your combat instructions up, which can be a very long time given how some higher tier games go. So yeah, other than that, the ship's actually really nice. Again, I would take a version of this with just the improved AP and without the combat instructions and a normalized reload time. Heck, I would even take like a 13 second, 14 second reload, but just like 18.5, that's just rough, right? So that's my 2 cents on the Aguirre, guys. Let me know what you guys think about her in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.